Today, we're diving into the life of a true titan, a man who could move markets with a whisper and advised presidents, often from nothing more than a park bench. We're talking about Bernard Baruch, the original lone wolf of Wall Street. One of his rivals used this very metaphor to describe him, and it just captures his genius perfectly. It's this incredible mix of caution and cunning. He'd do all the work, figure out the risk, but he was never going to be the last one out the door. It was a core part of his whole philosophy. I mean, just picture that for a second. A guy with that much power, that much influence, and his office of choice is a simple bench in the park. So that's the real mystery we're getting into today. Who was this man who could walk so easily between the worlds of high finance and global politics? To really get Baruch, you have to start with that legendary nickname. See, the lone wolf wasn't just some catchy phrase. Nope, it was his entire strategy, his philosophy, and honestly, it was a warning to anyone who thought they could figure him out. Just let that sink in. He made himself a millionaire before he even turned 30. He was so fiercely independent in the market that he earned that lone wolf title. And yet, this same guy was so respected that he became a go-to advisor for some of the most powerful leaders on the planet. But here's the thing, none of this was handed to him. He didn't come from money or a powerful family. Baruch's story is the classic American tale of an outsider, starting from way down in the post-Civil War South and clawing his way right to the top. Can you imagine the culture shock? He was born during the Reconstruction era in South Carolina, and then his family picks up and moves to the chaos of New York City. He gets a public college education, and from there, he walks right into the one place where an outsider with zero connections could make a name for himself, Wall Street. And his starting salary in this world of unbelievable wealth? $3 a week. That's it. He was a runner, the lowest rung on the financial ladder. When you think about what he would become, that starting point is just, well, it's staggering. But he wasn't about to let that define him. Since he didn't have money or connections, he decided to make knowledge his currency. The guy literally devoured financial manuals, memorized every detail about industry, and took night classes. He just plain out worked everybody, building this incredible encyclopedic mind that made the big players start to notice. So with that foundation of pure knowledge, he didn't just play the market, he learned how to hunt in it. This is where the legend of the lone wolf was really born, in that mix of deep analysis and absolute fearless independence. There's this great story from one of his first huge wins. He's on a ferry coming back from the horse races, and his pockets are so stuffed with cash, literally bulging, that he's actually worried the boat is going to capsize and he'll have to swim for it. It just paints such a vivid picture of his sudden, almost surreal success. And listen to how he described his own strategy. He refused to run with the herd. He preferred to just sit back, watch everything from a distance, analyze, and then strike only when the moment was perfect. He saw himself as a predator in the market, not one of the sheep. This right here is one of his most famous and probably wisest principles. Baruch knew that greed is the ultimate killer in the market. As they say, you'll never go broke taking a profit. So his advice was simple: sell too soon. Lock in your gains instead of getting greedy and trying to squeeze out that last little bit at the very top. Okay, but Baruch's story has this whole second act, and it's every bit as incredible as the first. He makes this massive pivot from the dog-eat-dog world of Wall Street straight into the halls of power in Washington, D.C., and he completely reinvents himself in the process. You can really see this massive shift just by looking at his nicknames. On Wall Street, he was the lone wolf, a speculator focused on personal profit. But in Washington, he becomes a public servant, and his focus shifts to hard facts and national policy. The skill set was the same, that deep, unemotional analysis, but the mission was totally different. And he was about to get a brand new nickname. So, during World War I, he gets tapped to run the War Industries Board. His job? Mobilize the entire American economy for war. And all that encyclopedic knowledge he'd built up as a young guy on Wall Street, it was now a critical national asset. His command of the data was so total, so impressive, that President Woodrow Wilson himself gave him his new name, Dr. Facts. Think about that. He went from a self-taught outsider to the one guy the President of the United States relied on for the cold, hard truth. And his influence didn't stop with Wilson, not by a long shot. He went on to advise presidents all the way from Warren G. Harding to FDR and Harry Truman. We're talking Democrats and Republicans. For decades, his fact-based, no-nonsense advice was sought out, making him one of the most durable figures in American history. So, after all that, what's the big takeaway from this incredible life? Well, Baruch pretty much distilled his whole life's work into a personal code, a set of principles for how to handle not just the market, but really any complex problem you might face. His code really boils down to a few key ideas. First, self-reliance. Do your own homework. Second, judgment. Base your decisions on facts, not on what you hope is true. Then, courage. Know what you can handle before you take the leap. Fourth, prudence. Stay humble and always remember his rule about selling too soon. And finally, pliability. Be ready to change your mind when the facts change. Being stubborn is the enemy. It's basically a blueprint for how to think for yourself and act with confidence.
In the end, I think one of his rivals summed him up perfectly with this quote. His real power was that you could never pin him down. He was always adapting, always moving, whether he was navigating a stock trade or a delicate political negotiation.
So what was he? A brilliant speculator who mastered the market, or a dedicated statesman who served his country? You know, maybe the real lesson from Bernard Baruch's life is that you don't have to choose. Maybe he's proof that the mind of a wolf can in fact be put to the service of a nation.